I can't be the only one when finally given a chance to be a player in a D&D campaign that I want my character to be similar to something that I've seen recently. Whether it's a character from an anime or a manga or a video game or a book, I want them to play similar to that character. With this idea in mind, you would look it up online, see if anyone else has found a way to play this specific character in their D&D game. And when finding videos, you'll only find builds that are similar to this character. And I don't blame people for making specifically only builds. And I can see why, because from experience, it's hard to convince a DM to use a homebrew subclass, mainly because a lot of homebrew out there is very, very broken and it can ruin a game very fast, and just the subclasses themselves probably don't fit the vibe that a DM is looking for in their game. But sometimes those builds that they suggest to you still doesn't feel like the character that you want to play as, mainly because you're still using things from the traditional D&D, and the traditional D&D can only go so far to make you feel like that character. And I think we all know where this is going. We can all see what the title of this video says, so let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's say you actually want to play Artoria Pendragon or Saber, King Arthur herself, in your D&D game. Well, I got the perfect thing for you today, guys, because I have created a subclass, a Paladin subclass, known as the Oath of Camelot. This subclass will encapsulate all the abilities that Saber has shown throughout the Fate Stay Night franchise, and to have you, the player, finally get to feel like your favorite waifu / heroic spirit. But before we get into the video, guys, I really appreciate if you can give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. There will be more content similar to this about other anime characters and specific subclasses that you can play in your D&D campaign. If you are a fan of the Fate series or have any knowledge of the series, you'll know that Saber or Artoria is one of the strongest servants in the entire franchise. So trying to encapsulate an entire subclass based around her and making it balanced for a D&D game is incredibly challenging, while also still making it feel like the character. I think I've done the best I possibly could with this. There are obviously going to be a few things probably missing from her and her backstory and her abilities, but I just primarily based it around the most important ones, or the ones that most people would know about and can recognize. As I said before, this is a Paladin subclass, and I think it's a no-brainer why I chose the Paladin class as Saber's subclass. She is the King of England who swore to protect Camelot and its people after pulling Caliburn from the stone, and many of the features that the Paladin class receives are similar and can correlate with Saber and her abilities, such as Divine Smite, which can be seen as the holy magic that radiates from Excalibur, or Aura Protection, which can be viewed as the unbreakable defense of her holy scabbard Avalon. As a Paladin, you won't get to choose a subclass at level 1. Instead, for the first 2 levels of this class, you will be gaining features such as Divine Sense, Lay on Hands, a fighting style, earning the ability to cast spells at first level, and the bread and butter of the Paladin that was mentioned before, Divine Smites. When reaching level 3, you gain features such as Divine Health and your Sacred Oath, or your Paladin subclass. Each Paladin subclass, the character has to swear an oath that binds them forever. Depending on the subclass, there are a number of tenets that the Paladin must follow, and the Oath of Camelot is the same. The tenets of the Oath of Camelot are sacred words spoken by each member of the Knights of the Round Table. The oath signifies to never murder, flee, treason, give mercy, and to be respectable to your fellow man. When creating the tenets for this subclass, I wanted them to reflect the personality traits that Saber showcased in the Fate series. Her chivalrous nature when in battle, how she became an emotionless ruler as the King of Camelot, and her honor as a knight as a servant to her master when participating in the Holy Grail Wars. Reaching level 3, not only do you gain your tenets, but you also gain new spells that you can cast and your channel divinity features. At specific levels, you learn new spells that follow a theme to the subclass. For the Oath of Camelot, I wanted the spells to be similar to many abilities that Saber has or matches her personality or fighting style. So for this next section, we'll be going over the spells you gain at each level. At level 3, you learn Compelled, Duel, and Zephyr Strike. If you know Saber, she is one of the many characters in the franchise that would face and convince her opponents in an honorable duel. This is also a reference to her personal skill, Charisma, a skill that helps her gain influence over others. And the spell Zephyr Strike says word for word, you move like the wind. Saber is known for wind being an element that attributes to her thanks to her invisible air noble phantasm that helps her greatly in battle, that increases her damage output with Excalibur. All of these advantages are given to you when casting Zephyr Strike and more. At level 5, you learn Fine Steed and Magic Weapon. Fine Steed is a reference to Saber's riding skill as a Saber servant, and being a knight during the medieval era, it would make sense that she had a steed that she could ride into battle, as well as having that sick ass motorcycle in Fate Zero. And magic weapon would be helpful when using non-magic weapons and have a player feel similar to wielding Excalibur. At level 9, you learn Haste and Water Walk. Saber is a known speedster in Fate Stay Night. Not the fastest, but she was one of the fastest servants in both the 4th and 5th Holy Grail Wars. Haste would be advantageous as a paladin, and the Water Walk spell being a reference to Saber being able to walk on the surface of water thanks to her receiving a divine blessing from the Lady of the Lake. At level 13, you learn Aura of Life and Death Ward. Artoria has a magical and powerful sheath called Avalon. This item has the ability to heal any wound, block and nullify powerful spells and attacks, and prevent the wielder from dying thanks to its extreme healing capabilities. Both Aura of Life and Death Ward are references to Avalon. Aura of Life giving you resistance to necrotic damage and assists other players with their hit points, and Death Ward prevents a character from being knocked unconscious if reduced to 0 hit points and instead be knocked to 1. And lastly, at 17th level you learn Holy Weapon and Steel Wind Strike. 2 spells that are references to Saber's Excalibur, Invisible Air, and Mono Burst skill. The Holy Weapon spell imbues the player's weapons in holy energy that envelops it in a bright light very similar to Saber's Excalibur sword. It becomes magical, gives an extra amount of radiant damage, and can possibly blind its target. A very powerful spell fitting for King Arthur. And Steel Wind Strike is a spell that reflects Saber's speed, fighting skill, and showcasing the spell that strikes as powerful as both Saber's Mono Burst and Invisible Air Phantasm. Next, we can discuss the subclasses Channel Divinity. Every Paladin subclass has 2 Channel Divinity features, and the 2 for the Oath of Camelot are Invisible Air and Mono Burst. Invisible Air. You can use your Channel Divinity to conceal your weapon and not allow your enemy to determine its range. As a bonus action, you can turn your weapon invisible. Each creature within line of sight to you must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, you gain advantage on attacks against the creature for 1 minute or until it drops to 0 hit points or fall unconscious. A creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on success. If a creature's saving throw is successful, the creature is unaffected. Mono Burst. As a bonus action for 1 minute once per turn for the duration, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you deal an extra 1d6 force damage to the attack's damage and choose to propel yourself 10 feet in any direction. Both of these Channel Divinity features are pretty self-explanatory, but many would believe that the Invisible Air is a bit overpowered, and I can see why. Gaining advantage in a fight in D&D is very powerful, especially once you start getting to higher levels with better weapons, stats, and abilities. But I think it's balanced as it can be while staying true to how it functions in Fate Stay Night. A player can only use a Channel Divinity once a day. Creatures make its initial save, and if they fail, it can re-roll the save at the end of each of their turns. I feel giving the enemy creature repeatable saves to avoid attacks with advantage is a good way to balance this out, so it's not crazy strong. Now we move to the next feature you gain in this subclass at level 7, and that would be the Aura of the King of Knights. Starting at 7th level, you encourage your allies with words of courage and resolve. You and friendly creatures within 10 feet of you has advantage against being frightened or charmed, and as a reaction you can parry 1 melee attack giving yourself +2 to your AC. To do so, you must see the attacker and be wielding a melee weapon. When you reach 18th level in this class, the AC bonus increases to +4. I really do enjoy this feature because it just really reminds me, and it makes me feel as if this is something Artoria would have, or something she could do, where she can give off these speeches in the middle of a battle that would keep her men and forces from being frightened or afraid and not to leave and fight until the very end. And then you'll see her also be able to help them out, make their resolve a lot better, so they're parrying attacks as long as she's on the field and they see her there. They got the resolve to keep parrying attacks, defending themselves and pushing further and further until they win the climactic battle. So this feature to me fits Artoria as a king, as a leader, as someone who's giving encouraging words and helping others. I think this really fits her character. This next feature may be a bit controversial. At 15 level, you gain a feature called Magic Resistance, a famous skill that many, and I mean many, servants in the Fate universe has under their belt, but let's see how it was handled in this subclass. At 15th level, you have advantage on all saving throws against spells and magical effects and cannot be affected by spells of 2nd level or lower unless you wish to be. Now I say it's controversial because having advantage on all saving throws against spells and magical effects is already really good, but also not being able to be affected by spells at second level or lower is really strong. But my counter argument is that by level 15, it should be near the end of a campaign, and any creature that can cast spells would be using spells higher than second level. It may be a concern when a creature loses its higher level spell slots, but overall, I feel this feature is fine for the level. If you still feel it's too high, you can change the spell level to 1 instead of 2, or remove having advantage against spells and magical effects. If you feel like that would balance this feature, go right ahead, but in my opinion, I think it's perfectly fine for what it is at its current level. And finally, the final feature for this subclass is at level 20, and it's called the Chosen King. At 20th level, you embody the power of Excalibur and Avalon and become the Holy Warrior of Camelot. Your weapon emits a bright light in a 20-foot radius and dim light 20 feet beyond that. If the weapon is not already magical, it becomes magical for the duration. As a bonus action, you gain the following benefits for 1 minute. At the start of your turn, you gain hit points equal to 1d10 plus your Constitution modifier if you have at least 1 hit point. Your weapon deals an additional 1d6 radiant damage. Your melee weapon attack score a critical hit on a roll 19 or 20 on the d20. The Channel Divinity Invisible Air cannot be activated. Alternatively, you can instead choose to use the hidden ability of Excalibur and unleash its full might. As an action, you gather a large amount of magical energy to cover your weapon in a gold light with the same shape. When prepared, you fire a powerful gold stream of magical energy within a 40-foot cone. Each creature of your choice in the cone must make a DC Constitution saving throw or take 8d10 radiant damage plus your charisma modifier on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. Whichever feature you choose to use, you can't use either again until you finish a long rest. I think it's easy to see what this final feature is comprised of. The first section is Excalibur revealing itself with the golden glow at full power. This is the reason why the Channel Divinity Invisible Arrow wouldn't work with this feature, because there's no way you can hide the sword if it's glowing with all this energy. Or if you want to have Saber's Noble Phantasm, you can instead choose to shoot a large golden beam of light. This is a very powerful feature, but at level 20, you should be facing powerful enemies for the end of your campaign. And having these type of feature will definitely make you feel as if you fully composed yourself of Saber, and you feel like probably the most powerful Paladin in the world. And that, folks, is the Oath of Camelot subclass, a homebrew based on Saber or Artoria Pendragon. This was a fun homebrew to create, especially when finding ways to convert a lot of Saber's known abilities to fit Dungeons & Dragons. As I said before, there will be more videos like this with different characters and media created into several different subclasses for your pleasure. If there is any character you'd like to see as a subclass based around them, give me your suggestion in the comment section below. I'd really appreciate the feedback. And I also like to thank my Patreon members that have followed thus far. And if you want a copy of this build, you can check out the Patreon yourself, which you can find in both the pinned comment section and description of this video. So thank you everyone, thank you so much for watching this video until the very end, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.